clue what he's talking about and who therefore has no clue whether his revelations line up with reality. So in terms of intellectual prowess, Paul is to Muhammad what a tenured theology professor at Oxford is to an internet troll whose most careful investigations begin and end with a Google search. The Apostle Paul was a Pharisee who studied under Gamaliel, one of the greatest Jewish rabbis of the first century. Paul knew the Old Testament inside and out, which is why he quotes the Old Testament so frequently in his writings. This is important because Jesus claimed to fulfill a variety of Old Testament prophecies, and you can't really examine this claim if you don't know what the Old Testament says. Muhammad was almost completely ignorant of the Old Testament because his knowledge of the Jewish scriptures was limited to what he heard in conversations. Not surprisingly, despite Muhammad's numerous interactions with Jews in Arabia, the Quran contains very few quotations from the Old Testament. Due to his ignorance of the scriptures, Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between stories that were in the Torah, and therefore divine revelation, and stories from later Jewish writings and commentaries, some of which were so late and so obviously fabricated they weren't far beyond the level of bedtime stories. Imagine how amusing it must be for someone who specializes in Jewish literature to read the Quran and find so many fables being presented to Muslims as revelation. Cain being taught how to bury the dead by a raven, Solomon listening to a speech by an ant. As a general rule, if you're going